You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all for joining us yet again. You are now tuned in to High at 9 News, but also high noon on the East Coast. My name is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street, and it's Friday, November 11th, 2022, National Singles Day, the last day of Talk Money Week, World Origami Day, and of course, Veterans Day. Big shout out and good vibrations being sent out from our team to all the men and women out there who served. We hope you all soon get to enjoy the safe access to quality medicine, healthcare, and treatment from America you truly deserve and have sacrificed on so many levels for. For everyone out there watching, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to High at 9 News on all social media platforms. We're live on weekdays on YouTube and Twitch, audio only on Clubhouse. But if you do choose the Clubhouse route, you can also participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story presented. We're gonna start off by paying a few bills first. So run it.
You want to grow some of the best weed in the world? Then you must start with the best genetics in the world. Go to www.dnagenetics.shop to order regular, feminized, or autoflower beans. All of your favorite DNA genetics cultivars such as Kosher Kush, Skywalker Kush, and oh yeah, Chocolate Truffle Shuffle. Boasting more cannabis awards for their award-winning genetics than any other company in the world. Remember to go to www.dnagenetics.shop to see why our terps don't lie.
Oh yeah, DNA. Today's first headline is coming from no other than the longest continuously operating retailer in the industry, known for his affinity for smoking the best weed in the world. He's known as Gucci Blanco to the Mar-a-Lago staff, White Gucci to Delta 8 hustlers out in Detroit, but we know him as the highest Republican. Even though you can always bet on him supporting the political party, sure to piss you off the most, just don't expect him to pay up when the bill comes due. Y'all know who it is, Jason Beck. What you got for us today, my man? Happy Veterans Day.
Oh yeah, happy veterans out there, and I hope everyone can read my hat because today is Veterans Day. And you know, in my story yesterday, we talked about Kansas, if everyone remembers. Today, my story is still in Kansas, and I feel like I must be Toto in regards with this story because I think everyone is going to love this story. It's a big, good, feel-good story for the weekend. Because Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office newest canine is not going to be trained to detect marijuana. With Missouri voters approving a state amendment allowing recreational marijuana, Kansas is nearly surrounded by states that have either decriminalized marijuana to some degree or made it legal for recreational or medical purposes. With that, some law enforcement agencies in the Sunflower State are changing some training strategies. With the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office, this involves its canine, four-legged officers who serve a dual purpose. In a quote, "They're patrol dogs, and they're also drug detection dogs," said Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office canine handler Deputy Tyler Brooks. Brooks said the canine's skills has helped in various searches. A lot of times when we are conducting a search based on probable cause gained by the detection of marijuana odor, we may discover other more violent crimes like gun possession from felons or things like that, Brooks said. But in the last year, the sheriff's office decided not to train its new canine, Gator, in marijuana detection. We are erring on the side of caution. We don't know if he as a tool is still going to be useful to us or not. If something occurs to make marijuana legal in some capacity, Brooks said, the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office invests about $30,000 per canine on training before they start the patrols, and the department's strategy is to remain cautious on the future of marijuana. If something changes within the state during the work life of the dog, it could mean that we have lost an extremely expensive tool, and there are so many uncertainties, Brooks said. 4 of the 5 canines in the unit with Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office have been trained in detecting marijuana. Marijuana is illegal, just like any other drug, so it's still probable cause to perform a search if we locate it, Brooks explained. Same way if we found cocaine in plain view or something like that. So we haven't really seen a change in operations other than just being preemptive in not training a dog on marijuana in this case, in the case that something changes in the future. Well, I'll tell you what, the fact that I just covered a story yesterday about a cops being nervous about cannabis being legalized in Missouri from Kansas, and now another department in Kansas is saying, you know what, we're not going to even train our dogs to sniff for marijuana anymore because basically drugs won in the drug war. So shout out to all these guys that are actually starting to understand how to actually appropriate some of their law enforcement resources. And this is Jason Beck reporting for High at 9 News.
I've always been curious. I know last year on our previous show, I covered a story about some dogs that were being retired because you can only train them for certain things. You can't train them to be, so like in the airport, you don't have bomb and drug dogs. They're one or the other. And so once
you can't train them to do both.
No, and once you've trained them to do a smell, they can never undo it. So like once you've been trained for cannabis, they have to retire the dog because they can't untrain them to hit on cannabis. And so there's a decent amount of retired drug dogs. And there was this like rumor that they were going to have to kill them. And it was like, that's really fucked up. But people can actually adopt these retired drug dogs. And I'm like, I want a fucking weed dog and I'm going to take them everywhere. I'm going to roll around and he's just going to like sit next to people's bags. And I'm like, hey, you want to party?
Right?
I'm not going to be a dick. I'm just going to be like, my dog likes you. Let's hang out.
I find it interesting that it only costs $30,000 to train a dog to sniff for weed.
Why? I mean, you can train a dog. You can train a dog to do a lot of things.
I think it should be more than that. I think they should. State contracts usually, you know, people are just like raping them hand over fist, and I'm just surprised.
Well, that's not the right word.
60,000. Sorry, 6. They just get over on the government pretty bad.
Yeah.
And government allows for companies to do this, so it's kind of like a mutual benefit or however you want to call it. But nonetheless, I'm surprised it's not more.
I mean, if you wanted to train a dog to do a regular thing, it's less, you know.
Yeah, if I wanted to train him to fetch.
My homeboy Ryan Matthews is a combat veteran, and he is a celebrity dog trainer as well. And he was telling me like a lot of this stuff. And a big come up for him was like training dogs for the government to sniff out COVID. When COVID first popped up, it's pretty cool, like the science behind it. But like Nicole said, you can't untrain them to do that. And it would be cool to have a dog. It's like finding out where the weed is wherever you fucking go.
They've had
dogs. It would be great for your travels, Nicole.
They've had dogs that they say are trained to spot cancer. Certain dog, which I think is really remarkable. I mean, first of all, we don't deserve dogs. Like as human beings, we just don't deserve them. They are just too freaking cool. I'm so thankful for my dog. Big shout out to Dutch Master West. He's like I always say that I'm his service animal, but like he is my like everything. And like I think a lot of people forget how valuable these animals are also to the people that are working with them. Like I know they're cops, but like they become biffers
part of the family.
Yeah.
I don't trust anybody who doesn't like dogs and weed. If you don't like dogs and weed, like I don't know if I can trust you, man, for real.
People that say they don't like drugs.
The dog freak out when he finds the drug?
Well, they alert.
They like sit next to it and they do a thing.
They'll hit or they're like start.
It's
shaking their nose or
They think they found their toy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's different types of alerts. So during the drug war, there was the passive alert where the dog would just kind of sit and look in the direction of where the smell was emitting. And then there's active alert where the dog would actually like try to paw at it and was trained to go into the vehicle and chase down the cannabis source.
Yeah.
Hey, don't adopt the dog that's going to eat your weed. I'll take the cancer finding dog.
I mean, a lot of dogs do.
They don't
weed.
eat it. They don't
I
eat
know.
it.
They
like
eat
find
it. They
it.
get litty titty.
The trained ones. They're just trained to find it. Like
hold on. So you're telling me probably the best way to get your dog to not eat weed is to train it to be able to find it. So then that way it helps you too in case you lose your weed, then you can get your dog to find your weed for you.
Go find it. I got too high last night.
Go find it. Exactly. I knew I had a sack over here somewhere.
There's
I think we're gonna see some cannabis dog detectives in the future.
Right. They train these pigeons. This is kind of interesting. They can train pigeons to basically steal money. And there's this like group. Yeah, because pigeons, you can train them to steal like shiny shit and bring it back for reward. And so the dogs are trading their find for reward. Like the find isn't necessarily their reward. They get a reward afterwards. So once they find it,
can I get some of those pigeons that over to Jason's house and pick up my money?
Exactly.
Yes!
Well, hold on. So hold on, but Nicole, I have another question for you now to ask the Tyson group. Yes, because Mike Tyson used to train pigeons when he was an early boxer, and so you should ask them if he had any pigeons that could go and get money, and that's how Tyson got funded.
He still trains pigeons. He still has a bunch.
That's what I'm saying.
That's so interesting.
You got to ask that question, Nicole. We want to know.
The world wants to know about your pigeons.
Yes, I'm inquiring minds.
Mr. Tyson, I would like to know about your pigeon training.
Yeah, right.
And Evander's here.
Keep it rolling.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you all so much for enjoying that story with me. I know I enjoyed it, and shout out to all the dogs and all the dogs that help veterans. Shout out to all of them, canine friends. Coming up next, she's a cannabis business consultant, an industry veteran, a bullshit buster, and a self-proclaimed general overall data bitch, boasting over 13 years in the regulated market, but with deep roots in the legacy industry as well. So much roots in the legacy industry that she did some crime for a cannabis crime. It is none other than the Nicole West.
I did some crime for a crime. I
did some time for a cannabis crime.
Yeah, crime for some crime. Whatevs. It's all good. My headline this morning is coming out of Benzinga, and I would like to say, who really smokes weed? Because the FDA responds to a marijuana-related petition more than a decade later. Headline even says, procrastinate much? So the Food and Drug Administration finally responded to a marijuana-related petition after 11 years. After a good long think, the agency finally decided to reject the petition to exempt bulk marijuana and cannabis tinctures from regulated control under a long-standing federal statute, reported Marijuana Moment. Back in September of 2011, Dr. Beverly McCura, along with California attorney William McPike, submitted the request for an exemption under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, or the FDAC, that would allow for the marketing of bulk cannabis and tinctures without the approved new drug application as required. McCura and McPike were hoping to be considered under the FDAC grandfather clause that provided exemptions for drugs manufactured prior to 1938. The petitioners asked for an administrative hearing to consider if cannabis is suitable for the exemption, and in that substance, according to them, was advertised and sold in the U.S. in the early 20th century. Last week, the FDA finally got around to denying the petition, saying that petitioners have not demonstrated that you have the right to an opportunity for a hearing, and that they had not shown that the formal evidential hearing is in the public's interest. The agency highlighted that the exemption quoted demands that a given substance has been classified as a specific finished drug product. This means that McCura and McPike would have had to have shown a current marijuana product that was advertised between 1907 and 1938 to be taken as a companion and the suitable for an exemption. Generic bulk cannabis and tinctures just don't fit within that definition. Marijuana Moment asked the agency what took so long, and an FDA spokesperson replied to the agency. It has many pressing priorities, and we do our best to resolve them in a timely manner. And apparently a decade is a timely manner. This reference of a petition raising significant issues requiring extensive review and analysis by the agency officials, the spokesperson said. We responded publicly to the petition when we reached the decision on the petitioner's requests. So this is kind of interesting that I thought everybody should hear. This is, there was a petition. It finally did get denied. I think that there is a couple other that we're going to see, others that were petitioned that we will see be getting denied in the near future too. I really feel like we are just inching closer and closer to making sure that we are ready for either descheduling or rescheduling. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I really stand on deschedule or bust, but apparently the plaintiffs don't plan to appeal the denial because McPike, who's the lawyer, believes that federal reform is coming very soon. So I'm curious what everyone has to say about this. Not a surprise that it took them a while, but I think a decade is a bit long in the way of a response. There's been thousands of things replied to since then. So I'm curious what everyone on the stage has to say. And if anybody in the audience has any insight on this decade-long wait, and maybe we should check the spam box, FDA. I'm curious to see what else is in there waiting for a reply. And I'm Nicole West, getting high at 9 with y'all.
I want to know what crystal ball or Zoltar machine this guy has that he thinks that something is coming down the pike sometime soon.
Zoltar.
Yes. You remember that?
I do. I do from Big.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a Zoltar.
I think it's
just
a diplomatic way for him to say, I'm not appealing because, we give up. We're not going to continue fighting. And the excuse is that it's going to become federally legal anyway, so why bother? But that really, to me, is not a sound strategy to forgo an appeal. Just file the appeal, and if it gets legalized during the pendency of the appeal, wonderful. You can always withdraw the appeal. But giving up the option and just banking on that, to me, seems like a risky strategy.
They're probably like, it took 10 years this first time. What's another decade? What's going to happen then? Hopefully it'll happen within 10 years.
What do you think about this, Dr. Talleyrand?
Well, delaying the response for 11 years sounds like politics, to me. So I don't know why it took them that long to respond. But what I do think about it is a shout out to Dr. Beverly McGarria, sister of Dr. Todd McGarria, who's
rest in peace, Dr. Todd.
Why I got into this business, and one of the reasons why medical patients throughout the world can now access cannabis. So there's legacy there.
Yes.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that. So the woman that had applied was a part of like the original.
Was that Todd's wife? Was that
her
Todd's
brother
wife?
Was. No, it's his sister, I believe.
Gotcha.
Wow.
That is
really
fascinating. I did not know that, Dr. Talleyrand.
Wow. Well, thank you all for entertaining that story. I definitely hope that we see some more people applying for, different types of acceptance for cannabis, and that we don't just give up, especially if we haven't descheduled yet. So this is something that I definitely hope they follow up on, or somebody does. Omar, can you appeal this? Omar, Dr. Talleyrand, can you guys jump in and fight this appeal?
Deschedule or bust, or leave it the hell alone is what I have to say. Deschedule or bust, or leave it the hell alone. Leave it just as it is.
Oh, just as it is not going to go anywhere. We're going to all fail and fucking sink anyways.
No, just as it is. We're at the mercy of the feds.
Yep.
And, we're counting on them to continue to overlook or be tolerant, but they have these ridiculous laws on the books that need to go. They need to go now. Anybody in the industry who doesn't think that is not looking into the potential future that we could be facing in an authoritarian regime.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right, Omar. My point is that any form of rescheduling would have dire consequences for the industry. So my point is, leave it the hell alone unless you're going to deschedule it.
Well, that wasn't a reschedule request. That was an exemption request, which I understand that.
I'm just stating my point. That's all.
Yeah. Leaving it the hell alone is not going to get anyone anywhere. And we're all going to fail and end up fucking homeless in the next 5 years. But with that said, hopefully we can get some data and some numbers and turn that into some fucking money. We'll bring Rico Lamitte to bring that data, bring that money, and figure out how we can keep this going. Rico Lamitte's going to cabbage patch or happy cabbage his way right on into Friday. And we're going to go ahead and make that we remind people that being a dope dad is literally one of the coolest things that you can do. Rico, what do you have for us today?
All right. Happy Veterans Day, everybody out there. And I always get a little bit, weird on Veterans Day because my stepfather was a veteran and had a strained relationship with him because of a lot of the stuff that we dealt with growing up. But as a token of my appreciation for Veterans Day, I'm going to take a different approach with my headline today from Boing Boing by Jason Weisberger, titled "California's Marijuana Industry is Now Selling Weaker Weed." All right, so my stepfather was a veteran. He was a terrible human being, but still the only dad that I knew growing up. He never smoked weed, drank like a fish, hated marijuana, potheads, stoner culture, fact that I smoked as a teenager, even more when he learned that I was selling it in my early 20s. I never got the chance to meet my biological father. He, on the other hand, died of cancer before I could. He wasn't a vet, but from the stories that I heard about him, he was a pretty cool ass dude. He was McDonald's All-American, played in the NBA for a few years, pushed a whole lot of dope between New York and Virginia in the late 70s. And they said he smoked a lot of weed too. Maybe if he had access to the stronger stuff we do now, it could have helped. I sometimes wonder if my stepdad smoked, would we be on better terms today? He couldn't handle the shit that we smoke now, but them weak ass J's from back in the day, I don't know. It would probably chill his crazy ass out where he could talk like a human being with me, like we never got the chance to do. I'd love to ask him if it was the army that fucked him up that bad or the childhood demons that he refused to face. He used to say that he hated me and my older sister. He hated the fact that we didn't carry his blood in our veins, and he took it out on us when he was drunk. Sometimes when he was sober too. He never hit his kids, which is very interesting. And I'll never forget the utter joy that I felt seeing that look of absolute anger, pure rage on his face when I drove home from Virginia. Drove home to Virginia from Chicago one time with a few packs on me, hotboxing in my grandmother's Camry the whole way down, chain smoking blunts, and pulled up to the crib like Cheech and Chong just to piss him off. And never forget what I said to him. I was like, "You want me to roll you out? You want me to roll you up one, bruh? It's good for you. It'll probably chill your old ass out for once." I can't really remember what his response was, but it probably wasn't yes. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. This is back in 05, 06, and the shit that I had was nowhere near as potent compared to now, but it still would have fucked him up all kinds of ways off a couple of hits. Sometimes I wonder if he did smoke, would our relationship have been different? A lot of times I wish I got the chance to meet and burn one down with my real father when he was alive. He probably couldn't handle the new shit either. Maybe low grade would have been the right move for him, but I wouldn't even know where to find shit like that until now. There's a few California cultivators targeting old timers with ultra low potency weed. Apparently the idea is to make them quit talking about how great weed was back in the day when you barely got high off of it. Crazy to think back in 1995, just in 1995, 27 years ago, average American cannabis was 4% THC content, 4%, a 900% potency downgrade from what some shit on shelves today claims to be. Per the article, just 1%, and this is via data from HubSpot, or from FlowHub, just 1% flower sold in California this year had less than 14% THC content, while more than 80% tested over 21. So now brands are going after older smokers chasing nostalgia. Garden Society and Pure Beauty both test out between 5 and 10%. Country cannabis is at 4%. That's still too much. Hemp, joints, and cigarettes are flying off the shelves in the South. I never understood the point of consciously paying money for weed that won't get you high, but with the southern states opening up to cannabis, I think we'll see more of these low THC brands popping up to replace cigarettes. Maybe I'll check in today and see if one of the new dispensaries down in Virginia close to my parents' crib carries low-grade pre-rolls and get one of my sisters to drop off a Veterans Day care package for my stepfather. Even if his old stubborn ass refuses the peace offering after about 15 years of no words between us, it still will warm my heart knowing what the exact look on his face is without having to look at it directly from 2,500 miles away. Yeah, I'm petty like that. This is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News. I'm interested in hearing what everybody else's thoughts are on this low THC flower. Is it the next wave? I don't know. What do y'all think?
I mean, I don't think low THC flower is ever going to sell in a dispensary because customers have the option of just going to any store and buying some hemp.
I think this was an attempt at people who have low THC flower to put out some information to make people think that it's actually happening, so that maybe somebody would, like at a store, be dumb enough to be like, oh, let's buy a bunch of 12% weed because maybe it'll sell. I don't think, like, I think your better chance in like the big picture, like, first of all, what the fuck is a boing boing? And in an article, was that the name of the
boing boing is the website. They do a lot of news, like reposting from a bunch of other sites.
Okay, I was like, did he just say boing boing?
I thought they were trying to name a joint.
Then I think you'll have a better chance in the way of like that market of like shake and like roll your own joint shit, like that market. I don't think that people want like 12%. I don't think people are trying to get the chaos numbers that are lies. Like, I don't think that's where people are all trying to go. Like, I don't think that like the 50-year-old market is trying to get that like 37%. I think in the South,
it might be a way. I'm not. Yeah, I don't think it'll ever be.
They're just taking what they could get. The moment that there's more available, I think that it will be different. But in the way of like that market of 50-year-olds, 50 to 70, there is a place for it. But I don't think 12%, that like super low. I think that like normal reality between 15 and 25 is a good place.
But here's the thing: like, data shows that the older customers are spending the most and they're more loyal than the others. They want those intimate relationships with the dispensaries, and there could be a huge market for this in the emerging markets, especially in the South.
Nicole,
speak?
You're telling me. Please go ahead, Gretchen. Go ahead, Gretchen. Of course, without a doubt.
All I would say is I disagree. I agree with Rico that I think there is a market for this. I think that there are a lot of people, like say my mother, who I guarantee you smoked more weed than I did. But the last time she did it was in the 60s. And she looks at some of the stuff and stories she sees. And she's like, I'm not going to smoke that stuff. Who knows what it is nowadays? So I think there's definitely an older crowd would be more interested. I think there are folks who are more interested in just maybe unwinding at the end of the night and not being stoned and blasted out by their weed. I think there's definitely a crowd that wants a lower dose and makes them feel better. And if they think a lower THC is going to get them there, I think there's definitely a way to market it. And there will definitely be an emerging crowd. I agree
with that. But Gretchen, if you want lower THC, you're not going to pay the overpriced taxes for it. You're just going to go and buy some hemp because that's lower grade
My
THC.
mother is not going down to the corner and buying this off of some kid who used to be her student who's a criminal now. No.
Well, I mean, in your neighborhood, you can just walk into whatever old trap shop is around, and she could walk into. You could take her to that guy in the green suit you were telling me about.
And he was very nice. He was very nice. However,
my point
I'm
is
saying I think some people are going to want to go into a reputable business and are willing to pay for it.
I don't disagree that there won't be people, but I think the actual place is what weed is naturally, right? Like in that place of like that 12 to 20%, that place, rather than the super low THC. That's what I'm trying to say. Like weed all by itself, if we're not like juicing the crap out of it, ends up right around there. Like when we're growing most of these cultivars, if we're not going above and beyond, you end up right around there. And then also when you take the small buds and the shake and that sort of thing, when we're talking about that demographic, a lot of those people are rolling joints or wanting that kind of product. And so there's a way for you to have a 27% flour and a 19% shake for the people to roll their pre-rolls, all literally coming from the same product.
Nicole, you mentioned earlier about 12 and 15%. Can you tell the difference between 12 or 15% if you smoked it?
No, but I'm saying like it's just when people aren't going out of their way to get that like high potency. But when we're talking about like below, when we're almost at like hemp levels, I don't think that's what people are gonna like, unless you're using it as a harm reduction to cigarettes. Below that percentage when you smoke it, I don't think that people even get high.
What about people that just want to quit smoking cigarettes
That's
and
what I'm
still
saying,
have
harm
oral
reduction.
fixations and smoke
That's what I'm
hemp
saying.
because of?
That's
Okay.
exactly
Yes.
what I just said. That's
and
harm reduction for
one thing
cigarettes.
this industry,
I do see that.
one thing this industry might have to consider is that lawmakers are going to come in with their THC limits and start regulating that it's got to be lower. So
They ain't gonna do that. They're not gonna do that.
They've
That already
been
failed.
trying,
I
yeah.
don't think they're going to do that. They're already doing that.
That's already
Yeah.
failed. It only happened in Colorado, and they fuck everything up when it comes to weed.
And it happened
No,
in
it's
tried it
happening
in Florida?
Yeah, it's happening in a few
lots of
states.
places, Jason.
Florida,
Pay attention.
Illinois,
Read the regs.
Ohio. It's
As one of those
happening.
50-ish people in that demographic, I would be totally uninterested in this. I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I know I have a higher tolerance than maybe people that haven't smoked
You're
in so
somebody who
long.
consumes on a regular basis. So.
Yeah, but he's someone
think
that
a lot of
consumes
us-
low grade all the time because he
Smoke
lives in
less, smoke
Texas.
the whole joint.
Oh,
this is
Fuck.
something
All
Texas
right.
can get behind. Stone, you should
Let's-
invest.
You know what? It's time. It's time for us.
Listen,
It's
I
time
can
for
remember
us to watch.
smoking weed back in the 90s. It was better than a lot of stuff that I smoke today. So I didn't always have that crushed, gross shit. But I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, it's time for us to watch a commercial
interested.
about some good weed that's probably have like way above 25 to 30%. At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of Angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles. Oh, that is time for the disclaimer. Man, I was all doing something right now. Sorry, guys. The thoughts and opinions in general shade thrown on the High at 9 News of those individual speakers, not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status in any country, substance, area, territory, or authority. The views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Our sponsors do not imply, constitute the endorsement by us, expression any opinion whatsoever, any speaker, or anyone on stage. If you're an easily offended person, the show's probably not for you. Also, you should probably smoke weed more than 20%.
Oh, yeah, that's right. 20% or more weed. Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX, located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get high at 9 for 10% off your full order.
Oh, wait, where does Rico? I just realized Rico's not here.
Yeah, Rico said he had to leave. He had a happy cabbage emergency.
Oh, okay. All right, Gretchen. She's a feisty redhead conservative founder of Panoptic Strategies, a Washington insider, Mayflower roots, never backs down from a verbal challenge to any pot loving lib across the aisle, or anyone on this stage for that matter. Gretchen, what do you have for us this morning?
Good afternoon. I just want to say happy Veterans Day to everyone and thank you for their service. I don't have the experiences that Rico's had, but almost every generation of my family has served in the military, so they're near and dear and close to my heart. We've been fighting for this country since the revolution. My headline comes from Marijuana Moment. Here's what the midterm congressional election results could mean for federal marijuana reform. And this is a very long article because it goes into all sorts of situations, but I'm going to go with the most likely. Republicans take the House, Democrats keep the Senate. Jason Beck, I know you might not agree with that, but
I don't think
let's start
so.
there. Anyway, this is considered by many to be the most likely reality. And while it might be less ideal for advocates compared to a situation where Democrats keep or expand their majorities, there would still be a range of legislative possibilities for cannabis reform, including, most optimistically, descheduling. It's important to keep in mind that the Senate usually sets the tone for the Congress in general, according to Justin Streckel, founder of the Bold Pack. And because key players like Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Ron Wyden are both very dedicated to this issue, they have pretty good leverage over the House if they want to bring them to table on this issue. Senate Democratic leadership might not be able to force a Republican-controlled House to take up something like their comprehensive legalization bill, the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act, even if they were to pass it in their own chamber. something they have not yet accomplished. Only 3 House Republicans joined Democrats in approving a separate legalization measure in April, with even some pro-reform GOP members balking at some key provisions of the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act. However, short of broad legalization, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have shown interest in advancing more incremental reforms, such as marijuana banking legislation. Safe Banking Act has passed the House in some form 7 times now, with sizable bipartisan support. Advocates certainly would like to see far bolder reform advance. Some activist factions, as well as certain lawmakers, have actively opposed moving the standalone banking bill, given its general lack of focus on providing relief and support to communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. But at the same time, Congress has so far failed to pass the type of comprehensive reform that advocates have pushed for, even with Democratic majorities in both chambers. The Senate has all but given up on CAOA this session, given the steep 60-vote threshold that would be required for enactment. That might put pressure on the advocacy community to accept an incremental win with a Republican House majority. Not everyone is resigned to the idea that the only incremental reform would be achievable under this scenario, however. I don't see it being impossible to get comprehensive reform across or through the House if it's controlled by Republicans. This is according to Morgan Fox, the political director of NORML. He says, I think that if that were to happen, then its Senate would be a somewhat easier lift. Fox said that a Republican House, Democratic Senate situation actually does provide a little more urgency for incremental measures in the lame duck. If Republicans take the House, it's reasonable to assume that the leadership during the next session would still find itself being pressured on both sides to move on some form of marijuana reform, especially with vocal GOP advocates like Congressional Caucus chairs, Representative Dave Joyce and Brian Mast, as well as Representative Nancy Mace, who is sponsoring a broad legalization bill, the States Reform Act. Joyce also has a bill to federally deschedule cannabis without the specific equity and restorative justice components of Democratic-led measures that could receive bipartisan buy-in. Now, if Republicans are to take the House and the Senate, in this case, the political dynamics decidedly do not favor advocates, and the chief problem is the Republican control of the Senate would likely put Minority Leader Mitch McConnell back at the helm of the congressional agenda. McConnell might have played a critical role in federally legalizing hemp under the 2018 Farm Bill, but he's made abundantly clear that he's opposed to marijuana legalization and uninterested in taking on even more incremental reforms, such as safe banking. He decides what goes to the floor. It is incredibly difficult to see how we would address the underlying prohibition under a Republican Congress, especially if they take over both chambers. I think that there could be a pathway forward on something thoughtful and more robust, with Democrats keeping the Senate and Republicans taking the House. But Mitch McConnell loves prohibition, and it doesn't matter what committee chair is what. Mitch McConnell runs on the floor time in Senate. I'm not sure which way the Senate is going to go. I know Jason is fairly certain Republicans are going to take it. We'll see. Either way, we ain't getting 60 votes in the Senate to do jack. So people need to stop pretending that we're going to get comprehensive reform. It doesn't matter who's in party or who's in power for that to happen. I am not as optimistic for any type of reform coming up if Republicans do take the House. I also don't see any urgency in a lame duck session if Republicans take control of both chambers. I think what advocates and folks need to be focused on for next year will be the Farm Bill. That is what is up. That is where we can put provisions, and that is shit that has to pass. So people are going to be much amped to work with us, and maybe we should look at cannabis again as what it is, which is a crop. This is Gretchen for High at 9 News.
Oh, yeah. Gretchen, you're right. It is a crop. It's an agricultural commodity. And although I do believe that the Republicans are going to end up winning the Senate, I do agree with you that we're never going to get to 60 votes. We need to just focus on trying to get to 51 and being realistic.
I hate watching Mitch McConnell speak personally. That's my 2 cents. Is I literally hate watching him speak. Like, physically can't stand it. It causes feelings in my body that I want to crawl out of my own fucking skin.
Marijuana Mitch.
Bro, he stresses me out. Bad. Even I think listening to him bothers me too. Even when I'm not seeing him and I'm only hearing him, I can still visualize what he probably fucking looks like when he's talking. That bothers me too.
Me and him have had a number of conversations over the years, and he told me that I had the most compelling cannabis story that he had ever heard in his life.
That's nice. I think when it comes to good old Chuck Schumer, I think we are going to see his love of cannabis definitely dwindle in the next time around, because he's not up for re-election. So he ain't going to give a damn. He's not going to push CAOA because it is garbage.
That's
and
right.
he doesn't have time for that mess.
And
so I don't think you're going to see the love from Chuck Schumer that he's been selling to us this past year.
Oh no, he's gonna pivot. He's gonna be like, there's much more important things that the American people are concerned with right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think we're screwed. Care about the farm bill. That's what I'm saying. Farm bill.
I do agree with you, Gretchen. That it could be a good way for us to get a decent amount of provisions put in there to kind of not necessarily fix anything, but could stop some of the bleeding. But nonetheless, thank you so much for covering that. In an industry full of snakes, fakes, and flakes, in the great red state of Texas, with trolls posting up daily smoking Delta 8 under the bridge, this gentleman, Mr. Stone Slade, is hitting the high road. That's right. He's the host and co-creator of the new show Hitting the High Road, and he's also a fellow seeker of the truth. It is none other than the Stone Slade.
Thank you, Jason. I will have to admit, finally, after Election Day, that Texas is still very red, unfortunately. Today, my story comes from Michigan Live. Each year, the U.S. military recruits 175,000 young Americans with the sacred promise to take care of those who serve. However, among those same brave men and women, the suicide rate is about 50% higher than the general population, with many of those occurring to vets that are stuck in long lines for mental health care. Those that do get help through the VA are denied access to medical cannabis and prescribed opioids that create even more problems. With so many things that divide us here in the country, Americans have long been united in the belief that former soldiers deserve respect and honor. Unfortunately, much like the idea of social equity or Biden's presidential cannabis pardons, our government likes to use them as political pawns when pandering to the public. Yet they never seem to get the help and relief they need from the country they so proudly serve. Whoa, that's not my dog. Many times those veterans receive that help from Veterans Group and fellow Americans looking to actually do some good. As many of you may or may not know, our own Jason Beck teams up with the Weed for Warriors Project to bring compassion to vets in West Hollywood by getting them medical recommendations and helping them get medical recommendations and giving away free medical cannabis once a month, which is awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. Thank you, Jason. Another such dispensary owner looking to step in and help those in need is Kyle Cohey, a veteran-owned Lighten Up Cannabis Company in Flint, Michigan, a low-income area notorious for the Flint water crisis that started in 2014 after the drinking water of Flint was contaminated with lead and other bacteria. Last year, this company partnered with the Hero Project USA to provide 1,000 turkeys in a giveaway. And this generosity caught the eye of cannabis advocate and former Red Wing hockey star Darren McCarthy, who has lended his notoriety to the event, giving fans a chance to come out and meet the local great. Cohey said to have him hear about this and call us to help is really cool. He literally didn't ask for anything in return. And McCarthy is back for year number 2 and is bringing Detroit Lions star receiver Calvin Megatron Johnson with him to be on hand while they hand out another 1,000 turkeys to people in the Flint area next Saturday, November 19th, starting at 10 a.m. Kyle Cohey was inspired to start this event last year after learning that he had 100 patients that were in need. He said, we're just doing the right thing and taking care of people. They're also setting aside 80 turkeys specifically for veterans through an ongoing partnership with the Genesee County Veteran Service to ensure veterans in need and their families will have a meal. The only requirement is each person receiving a turkey must be 21 years or older, sign a liability waiver, and provide an email or texting address. Now, I don't want anybody to think I didn't choose the story to promote any certain dispensary businesses. I know nothing of the quality of the products in that store, but more just to highlight good people behind those businesses doing things for our community. With our government being so slow or unwilling to help veterans and others in need, it's comforting to know that there's people out there like Kyle and Jason Beck to pick up that slack and do what's right. Thank you guys for that. Thank you all to all the veterans for risking your lives for our freedoms. Happy Veterans Day. I'm Stone Slade reporting for the High at 9 News Hour. Sorry.
Oh yeah, this is definitely a feel-good story. Thank you so much for covering this, Stone.
Also, honestly, if your dispensary is not doing some kind of outreach for the veterans or for the terminally ill or for the people who got us to this point, for AIDS patients in cannabis, find a new dispensary. It's time to find a new place to give your money, because that is a big tell sign of their lack of awareness of what it took for so many of us to be able to get where we are. So yeah, if you are shopping in a dispensary that doesn't work with veterans, go find a new dispensary, or convince them to work with veterans. First, start by saying, hey, why aren't you working with veterans? And can we work with veterans? Introduce them to the Weed for Warriors or an organization, or if maybe cancer patients, or maybe epilepsy, or whatever the thing that drastically benefits from cannabis. If you could bring that to them, and then they say no, then it's time to find a new dispensary. But try to teach them first, because maybe they're just Chads and Brads that didn't realize that we all got here on the backs of the sick and the veterans. So. Thank you for your story so much, Stone. We're going to have to hop. We're a little tight on time today. We're going to go to Omar out in Clubhouse. He is a multi-talented attorney and the founder of the Bicoastal Boutique Cannabis Law Firm with offices in California and New York, NCIA director and the legal publisher, author of The Ganjier and the Purple Belt in High Style Jiu-Jitsu, reserving his right to fuck you up at any time with his knowledge, weed, or hands, all of which has been registered as a weapon of moderate destruction. Omar, what do you have for us today? Please tell us a beautiful story. I love your voice for this.
Thank you, Nicole. Happy Veterans Day and Armistice Day. Remember, war is hell. Remember Ukraine, everyone. My story is from Law 360 by Sam Reisman. The headline is New York pot regulators blocked from issuing retail licenses. A New York federal judge on Thursday agreed to block Empire State cannabis regulators from issuing the first marijuana retail licenses for 5 geographic regions across the state after a would-be applicant from Michigan said the process was discriminatory. U.S. District Judge Gary Sharp agreed with the plaintiff, an LLC named Varus Site NY1 Inc. that is majority owned by Michigan resident Kenneth Gay, that the state's licensing scheme is a likely violation of the Dormant Commerce Clause, a constitutional doctrine that blocks states from discriminating against out-of-state residents. The order arrives just weeks before regulators said they expected to recommend the approval of the first tranche of conditional adult use retail dispensary, or CARD, licenses at the Cannabis Control Board's meeting on November 21st. The order bars the New York Office of Cannabis Management from issuing retail licenses for the Finger Lakes, Central New York, Western New York, Mid-Hudson, and Brooklyn, regions that were to host approximately 2/5 of the 150 licenses regulators planned on issuing. The court said state regulators' arguments against the injunction were undercut by the fact that New York can still issue retail licenses for the rest of the state. The CARD program was designed by policymakers to award the first batch of retail cannabis licenses to New Yorkers with marijuana convictions on their records or members of their immediate families. Gay, the 51% owner of Varus Site, alleged in court documents that he would have qualified for one of New York's first recreational marijuana retail licenses, except for the fact that he has never lived in the state. I have never lived in New York, Gay wrote in a sworn declaration. I do not own any property in New York, and I do not have any significant presence there. Judge Sharp wrote that the Office of Cannabis Management's licensing requirements will have a discriminatory effect on out-of-state residents seeking a CARD license, and thus the heightened level of Dormant Commerce Clause scrutiny should have applied. He wrote further that the state regulators could not show that the CARD rules were narrowly tailored to serve a legitimate local interest in a way that would survive a constitutional challenge. New York cannabis regulators have said repeatedly there is no limit to the number of licenses they expect to ultimately dole out beyond the initial CARD program. But Varus Site told the court that an injunction against the CARD process was still warranted because the company would have lost a first mover advantage. The court agreed, writing, Varus Site has also demonstrated that it faces irreparable financial harm should their CARD application be denied due to the risk of being excluded to some degree from the market. OCM spokesperson Freeman Kloppot told Law 360 the office would not comment specifically on pending litigation. The Office of Cannabis Management is committed to ensuring that those living in communities disproportionately impacted by the state's enforcement of cannabis prohibition have an opportunity to participate in the market that we are building. And we are additionally committed to getting New York's cannabis supply chain fully operational, Clawpot said in the statement. The Cannabis Control Board will soon have before it applications for the conditional adult use retail dispensary license, which will start closing that supply chain. The statement continued. Counsel for Varsite declined to comment on Thursday. My take is that this type of litigation was predicted when the First Circuit Court of Appeals struck down the state of Maine's residency requirement for medical cannabis licensing. And now that this challenge has met success in New York, expect a wave of litigation to follow challenging state requirements that discriminate against out-of-state residents. I'd like to hear from my fellow correspondents on how this litigation trend is anticipated to affect the industry. The headline is New York pot regulators blocked from issuing retail licenses. This is Omar Figueroa, lawyer, publisher, and Ganjier instructor, reporting from Sonoma County, the traditional territory of the Pomo, Miwok, and Wapo nations for High at 9, high noon Eastern.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Omar. Gretchen, I mean, it doesn't look like New York may not have dispensaries open by the end of the year. I might be winning that bet, girl.
Dude, if we can double or nothing right now if you want.
I'm down to double or nothing. I know
you're not going to pay.
I 100% will pay. I'm 100% a payer. I'm
ready. I'm still holding out hope. Something's going to open before the end of the year.
Something's going to open before the end of the year. What do you think, Nicole?
I definitely, with New York, I agree with Gretchen. Something will open before the end of the year. And when it comes to the lawsuit happiness, I'm from the great state of California, which is also known as land of the lawsuit. So I've been watching weed businesses sue each other or try to sue each other since like they were like in the trap. Like I've watched people like trap businesses back in the day when they had their like pin on weed maps and no real business try to like sue each other over like a trademark about a dispensary that they're not supposed to have. So I just kind of think it's par for course. And like, you know, there's a lot of people that are really starting to do the thing that big business does, and big business equates a certain part of their budget to lawsuits, right? Like that's just a part of it. You just like have an assumptive amount of money that you're going to waste on lawsuits. And so I think the ability for some of these companies to sue the government is like a win for the industry. And so we kind of have to almost encourage some of it because we have to fight back, right? And so like part of that win is us getting the money to hire lawyers and hire lobbyists and hire people to go up against the government. A lot of times that is lawsuits against like Rachel Gillette against the IRS and sue against the DEA. Like you have to go up against them. So like we just have to play their game is what I think the moral of that story is.
I mean, Omar, what do you think? Do you think stores are going to open before the beginning of the year in New York?
Yeah, because this only eliminates 2/5 of the state from issuing licenses. So I think at the next meeting they're going to issue licenses. So
it's only for 2/5 of the state.
It's a small, it's not the whole state. And New York City, New York City is still going to fucking like people.
Interesting. Very interesting.
It's not the whole state.
You want to take back your bet there, Jason Beck?
No, I'll still double down. I'll still double down.
Yeah, and if you want to double down again, think about this. There's going to be copycat litigation. There's going to be other people with tenuous ties to New York who would have ranked very low and wouldn't have gotten a license, who are going to say, hey, I'm on the same boat. It's discrimination against me. I have lots of California ties, but no New York ties. So expect to see a lot of copycat litigation. And you could end up seeing like the whole state blanketed with injunctions. Everything changes once the licenses are given, because then the injunction does not favor the status quo. The status quo right now are no licenses. But once licenses are given out, then somebody who asks for an injunction has a very different standard to persuade the court to change the status quo.
Yep. And Anna Lewis in the audience said something that I want to quote because she said it much more eloquently than I did with less F words. And it was lawsuits against corruption are a fight for justice. And like that's really how I feel, and I'm in big support of us learning how to play at their game too.
Oh yeah. This doctor has been around so long that he probably wrote your parents' medical cannabis recommendation. This doctor has had more patients than liberals waiting in line at a President Biden book signing. The founder of Medican and co-founder of CESC, the nonprofit cannabis research organization. It is none other than the one and only Dr. Gene Talleyrand.
Thanks, Jason. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. My headline today is from a research study published in Psychoactives, a peer-reviewed scientific journal. The study is titled "The Nose Knows: Aroma, but not THC, mediates the subjective effects of smoked and vaporized cannabis flower." So one of my day jobs is research. I spend a lot of time reviewing studies to keep up with advances in cannabis science. From my perspective, cannabis research is split into two camps. First camp focuses on the single agents like THC or CBD or synthetic cannabinoids, and is more aligned with traditional research paradigms. And the second focuses on the whole plant with its broad spectrum of active ingredients. Most published studies are of the first camp, unless the research is about a negative outcome. So I find this study on whole plant cannabis flowers rare and exciting. As well, the research involves cannabis aroma, which is something published on. The objective of this study was to identify the features of smoke vaporizing cannabis flowers that correlate with a pleasant effect. Basically, the investigators want to know what makes smoking cannabis appealing. Is it the more THC, the better? Is it the terpenes, or what?
Do we just lose?
Wait, we lost him.
Did we lose Dr. Gene?
I'm gonna say it's the terpenes. Just
did he get terped out just now?
I think so. The high THC people just took him out.
That was yeah. So it's really funny that that's the name of the article. When I first started like writing for cannabis years ago under Harvest Honey, because it was before cannabis was legit, and I was trying to get into real estate. And
also her Instagram name.
Also my Instagram name. But I wrote an article for Big Buds magazine, which I'm kind of ashamed that I worked for way back then, which was owned by Advanced Nutrients. And it was called The Nose Knows. And it was about the fact that people were playing the strain game name, and they were just, and as I'm guilty of it, Jason, I know you're guilty of it.
I'm not guilty of it.
Shut the fuck up.
No
Someone
way.
comes in and you look at a bag of weed and you're like, I'm going to call this. Right? Like, you're just going to say, this is what we're going to call it, because it's that hype shit. It's the good, whatever. And so, or it smells like something to you, right? You're like, this smells like cherry blossoms or whatever you want to say. And so you name it something. And then even though it is something else. And so what the name means nothing. The name game is a joke. And so when we're having the conversation of like how our bodies respond, so much of this, and then when we think about terpenes, this is ancient Chinese medicine in the way of aromatherapy, right? So all of these terpenes, when you like use different oils, different essential oils, this is the same thing. The terpenes are the same at a base level when you get down to the end of it. Like if you extract limonene from an orange or you extract limonene from citrus weed, it's the same fucking terpene. And so our body's responding, they're looking for what they want. Like babies eat fucking dirt when they have iron deficiencies, because the body is being attracted to something, right? Like you're being drawn to it. Yep.
We have Dr. Talleyrand back with us in Clubhouse.
Oh,
Are you with us, Dr. Talleyrand?
I am. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
All right. Do we have time or
yeah, go ahead and try to summarize. Finish it up.
Okay.
Take us home.
So basically what I'm telling you about is a study that was done in Oregon, where they tried to figure out what was good weed and what was not. And their criteria was a pleasant effect. So here are the highlights to the study. On an appeal scale, older people reported a more pleasant experience than younger people. Participants age 40 or older reported more subjective appeal after smoking than those 40 or younger. And the 60 plus demographic reported the most pleasant experience. There was negative correlation with the frequency of consumption. In other words, those who smoked less than once per week reported a more pleasant experience than those who smoked multiple times per day. And that probably had something to do with tolerance of users. And then participants who consumed small doses reported more subjective appeal. So THC potency in general did not correlate with more pleasant experiences. Neither did terpene content. And when biological gender was stratified, males did have a more pleasant experience with the higher THC potency. But the strongest association with a pleasant experience was the aroma of the flower. The more pleasant the aroma, the more pleasant the subjective experience. So there you have it. In conclusion, and the point is that more THC does not mean more pleasant effect. This was particularly important to the investigators because they have concerns of high doses associated with cannabis use disorder, cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, and psychosis. And the investigators also suggest that the cannabis industry realigned its value of cannabis to using aroma instead of THC potency. Despite the fact that most people smoke cannabis, there's very little research that validates quality flowers. I like this study because it brings science to defining what is or isn't good cannabis. Our research has used aroma to distinguish between energetic and couch lock effects of cannabis, and I applaud these investigators for contributing to the study of the pleasant and positive aspects of smoking or vaporizing cannabis flowers. This is Dr. Jean Talleyrand.
Thank you, doctor.
Talleyrand.
Thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour. Great show, everybody. I know we got to roll with the punches today.
The nose knows.
The nose knows.
Yes.
Big shout out to everybody for tuning in. I did want to make sure that if there are any veterans out in Long Beach, tomorrow there is a compassion drop at Pine Street Catalyst, and there's going to also be a Pine Street party that the Catalyst group throws once a month downtown, helping rejuvenate the city of Long Beach, which we're super thankful for everything they do. Big shout out to Weed for Warriors for everything that you guys do for us as well. Thank you all for tuning in every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in and daily listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Thank you to the haters for still talking about us. Huge thank you to True Classic, LAXCC, and DNA Genetics for helping us keep the lights on. Thank you to our correspondents for being amazing. To 3 is 4 for helping us look like we know what we're doing. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us.
I don't know about you, but I always know what I look like when I'm doing.
That was a perfect example of that. You can't even say that as a sentence.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.